What does insanity mean, especially in these criminal cases?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I would say that there are different versions of insanity. There's the layperson's term, which is often if somebody does something that they can't understand, the average person can't understand. So they would say that anybody who, I don't want to say the words to kill your YouTube channel, but anybody that commits like offences against children or, sort of terrorist attacks, those kind of things, by definition are insane because they can't understand why they would do that, because we all have our social and moral boundaries. The psychiatrist definition, I guess, would be an actual diagnosable mental illness, probably a psychotic mental illness like schizoaffective disorder or schizophrenia that has specific symptoms, as I was mentioning before, auditory hallucinations, delusions. That would be my definition of insanity. I wouldn't use the term insanity clinically, but I'd use the term psychotic. But none of that really matters. The important terminology is the legal test for insanity. So there's a slightly different place in the world, but in the UK, to have the finding of not guilty by reason of insanity, it means that you've got a recognizable mental illness. You were suffering with symptoms at the time of the offence that you committed. You either didn't know what you were doing or you didn't know what you were doing was wrong. So I'll give you an extreme example of those things from patients that I've seen, from defendants I've seen. So it's quite rare to see somebody that didn't know what they were doing. So I can think of a man who, it's quite a long time ago, who believed that he was burning he had these paranoid delusions about demons living in his kitchen. So he did a little ritual and he set a fire on a stove. He was so kind of confused and perplexed. He was hearing voices at the time that he literally forgot about the fire. It spread, it burnt like a couple of flats down in the apartment complex. Luckily, nobody was caught. He was charged with arson, but I could quite easily prove with the evidence that he literally didn't know he was starting a fire because of his symptoms. More commonly than that, people did know what they were doing, but they didn't know it was wrong. So, for example, in fact, the young girl that I talked about before, Yasmin, is not her real name, but that's how I refer to her in my videos, my book. So she knew what she was doing. She knew she was ending her nephew's life, but she didn't know what she was doing was wrong because she had delusional beliefs, and in her head, what she was doing was right and was necessary. So to get the insanity plea, you have to have one of those two things. And the other thing I should say is that only a very small minority of patients that I assess, actually, I think there is evidence to suggest that they should get the insanity plea. It's probably like less than 5% of cases that I see.
Right. And I know you said you don't know too much about the 𝐭𝐫𝐬𝐲 case, but it kind of sounds like that, except for, so if I say 𝐭𝐫𝐬𝐲 seems to have delegated the murders. She seems to have a belief that she's some kind of religious vigilante, taking out zombies, taking out demon-infested people, including her children, by then using her brother. So we're using her brother to kill them. But then she collects the life insurance. So I think that could probably remove the insanity. Not that there's an insanity plea in Idaho, but that removes the insanity factor, right? Where she's like on the next day, she's calling for life insurance.
Yeah. So that really does sound quite calculated, doesn't it? It seems like there's a reason, there's an agenda, right? And even looking at Letecia STAUCH, despite what she claimed, if she didn't know what she was doing was wrong, if it was like, this other personality, why would she try to hide the evidence? So she wouldn't have driven all the way, 1,300 miles to try and get rid of the body if she knew what she was doing was wrong. If she didn't know what she was doing was wrong, right?
Never mind the fake polygraph test. Remember that? She literally tried to order a fake polygraph test. I mean, why would you do that if you didn't know what you were doing was wrong?
Absolutely, yeah. And in the cases that I see it, and just to reiterate, it's only a very small minority that I think reach the threshold for the insanity plea. They don't try and cover their tracks, because they literally don't think they've done anything wrong. So they're quite open about what they did. And in fact, they're surprised usually that other people are accusing them of doing something wrong. So a case that I frequently talk about in my YouTube video is Andrea Yates. So I'm sure as a true crime fan, you know about this one. So in 2001, she tragically, really horrible case, she killed her own 5 children. Right, and it's actually similar to that young woman, Yasmin, who I assessed. And it was because she believed that they were marked by the devil, and she felt that she had to do it to kind of save their lives, stop them going from hell. She called the police herself, and she called her husband immediately afterwards. That is the action of somebody, and explain what she did. She didn't, she didn't act like a guilty person who was trying to cover her tracks. That to me suggests that she literally didn't know what she was doing was wrong.
Interesting. Yes, that is actually a good example. Five children.
It's very sad.